Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we're helping you to get better money, become a better couple, and live a better life. There's so many shows you could be rocking with right now. So we are super appreciative that you are rocking with us. And we are excited about this show because, one of the core tenets of everything we do here at His and Her Money is legacy, man. We want to help you. Yes, we want you to get your situation together, but we want you to get your situation together so that you can start a generational legacy of financial stability for generations to come, not just the current generation that you are in. And today's episode, we're going to be moving in that direction, man, because again, a part of generational wealth is our ability to understand and invest in ourselves and the ability to pass not only financial assets down, but intellectual assets down as well. So we're going to be talking about how to turn your kids into stock investors. And to help us navigate this conversation, we have a very special guest by the name of Rendel Solomon. He is the founder of One Stock, One Future, and he's here to break this down with us in a way that we can all understand it, implement it, and pass it down. Hey, Rendell, let me say that again. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Rendell, welcome to the show.
Tyler, thank you for having me. Happy to be here with I'm assuming the better 30% of his and her. Money, but
Yeah. We hold it down solo on this one. The best part of the show is handling some other things, and so we're gonna do our best here solo. But man, we want people to know about you and who you are and what you do and how you can help us help our kids. So for those who are being introduced to you for the very first time, can you just say hello to everybody that's tuned in and let them know what you're all about, man?
again, thank you for having me on the show. Rendel Solomon, born and raised in Chicago on the West Side. So happy to be chatting with you, Tyler, as well as your viewers that are live with us right now. I think the key thing where I want to start and telling a bit about my story is you mentioned two items that are so key to sort of my growth, as well as what has led me to this point in my life, career, professionally, personally, with my own mission and passion. And you talked about legacy, and you talk about passing down wealth and knowledge. And that is so key and critical in our community. Legacy is one of those powerful words as you think about where we come from as a people, but how much farther we have to go. One of the things I say often that unfortunately in the Black community, we often have to pass wealth up, specifically on the financial side, we have to pass it up instead of down. And that is not the natural order of things. We all find
Hold on
ourselves.
now. I don't want people to miss that. That was a bar.
Come on now.
That was a bar Rendell just dropped. All right, say that one more time for the people that didn't catch it.
You got it, Talent. Unfortunately, too often in the Black community, we have to pass wealth up instead of passing it down. What do I mean by that? And that happens in a variety of forms. It comes in the form of aging parents and grandparents who unfortunately were either A, not taught, but more likely were so limited in the opportunities to develop the wealth that we're talking about, that you talk about so wonderfully on your show and helping people navigate this process across all areas of money. What I myself am doing with kids as well as adults, and what so many others are doing to build that financial knowledge. Unfortunately, our parents, grandparents, they were denied those opportunities. We can obviously dive more into that. And so what happens is their focus was on food, shelter, clothing. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we can get food, shelter, and clothing covered, man, by the grace of God, maybe that other stuff will work itself out. And that's often the mantra that we've seen in our households with our grandparents and parents. And now we're in a position in this generation, as well as obviously some in the prior generation, but we're at that place now where we're saying, look, it's not enough for us to have to use our resource and asset just to take care of our elders, which we were trained and are happy to do. My granny, who I will definitely send this video when it's ready. She loves having a chance to see me talk about these things. 80 years old, retired. She's my last remaining parent. And there is literally nothing she could call me for and ask right now. If I got $200,000 in the bank and Granny needs $200,001, I'm calling you, Tyler, to borrow that last dollar because she got my 200,000 and I need one more because she's going to be taken care of and I'll figure out the rest. We owe it to them. But what I want us to focus just as much on is how do we pass wealth down? So just quickly on my background, oldest of three, I grew up on the West Side, tough neighborhood here in Chicago. My late mother, passed away in 2006. And then my dad, unfortunately, who struggled with alcoholism for many years, passed just this summer. But one of the things that they instilled in us was this intense focus on education. And that's across the spectrum. Of course, we can send every kid to college, but education and knowledge comes in a variety of forms. I'm an advocate for college, but I'm also an advocate for much broader forms of learning and understanding. And so all three, me and my two siblings, all three of us are college graduates. I'm grad school educated, first generation in our family to do so. Worked as an engineer for several years, worked in the music business in New York after getting my MBA at Columbia, and then made my way back to Chicago in 08 to work at a private equity firm that when I joined was at $300 million. My mentor runs the firm, and I just left 2 weeks ago on Friday, and they're at $1.2 billion under management. So I'm taking a sabbatical right now, working on a financial education initiative of my own and writing a kid's stock book with my niece. And so I'll save the one stock discussion for when we dive more into that. But that's where I am right now. I'm sort of on sabbatical and using this time to really think and reflect on these issues of racial equity and what I can do to even further contribute to addressing it.
Man, so many different directions I want to go now. I got lots of questions swirling in my brain, but here's what I want to, because we might not find a place to do it later on. Talk about how you positioned yourself to be able to take this sabbatical that has no specific end date in mind. Some people hearing that like, wait, hold up. How you just not going to work, bruh? So talk about what type of sacrifices, decisions you had to make, both long form and short term, that puts you in the seat that you're sitting in right now?
That is a heavy question, and it took a while to get to this point, both mentally, emotionally, and as importantly, financially, to be in a position to, in the middle of a pandemic, walk away from a job that pays deep six figures and say, "I'm going to go with no guaranteed income for a while." So let's do the financial part first, and I'll work my way back to the emotional sort of mental part of taking that step, because it was a years long journey to get to the point where I'm able to do something like that. On the financial side, as you talk about, I'm sure there's a video. I haven't seen all of you guys' videos, but I'm sure somewhere in there you've talked about budgeting at some point, right? You've talked about debt and credit. You talked about all those key principles of money management and financial management. And so I had to look at where I was financially in terms of my assets and liabilities, my income and my expenses, and say, okay, do I have enough cash and liquidity to leave a job where I'm guaranteed a paycheck every couple of weeks and say, I'm just not going to work for 6 months or 9 months? And I realized that I could do that and take that time to reflect. My industry will always be there. And if I wanted to get back in, I may be able to find my way in it. But to have this freedom and flexibility to take this time to further address and assess these issues of racial inequity that for far too long I thought could get solved just by going to school, getting good grades, getting a good job, and making some money. I've done that. And guess what, Talent? The issues are just as bad as they've ever been. The disparities are as bad as they've ever been. Yes, on a relative basis compared to my parents, my grandparents, and my great grandparents, I got nothing to complain about. But as a whole, our people still have a lot to complain about. A lot of things we can do in our community, but it's what's happening outside from a systemic and legislative perspective that's going to truly get us there. So that is the mental challenge that I went through over several years of continuing to progress in an industry that itself does not want me to be there, does not want you to be there. There's $69 trillion with a T of assets being managed in the asset management space. I can't comprehend, by the way, what $1 trillion is. Like in singles, I don't know. Does that fill a 4-bedroom home? Does it stretch 1,000 miles? Like, I don't know what $1 trillion singles look like. But out of 69 trillion of those, 1.3% of that money is being managed by women and minority-owned money management firms. Let me pause there. 1.3% of all of that capital is being managed by women and minorities. That's all minorities. That's Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, LGBTQIA plus, and women. 1.3%. And so when you start to break down that diversity, my guess is the Black number in there, we're talking decimal points of a percentage. And so what I realize is that my individual accumulation of more assets wasn't directly addressing the systemic issues the way that I thought it could. And I know that others are doing amazing things with their capital to address it, but I can't wait until I'm a multimillionaire in order to try to address systemic racism. So once that mindset kicked in, that's when I had to start charting my path to say, you know what, I need to step away and do something else. Is it back corporate? Is it entrepreneurial? Is it political? Is it a combination of all three? I'm not sure yet, but I couldn't even give my head the space to think about it and give myself that peace in my soul if I had to continuously work that job, which forced me to directly deal with that system that did not want me there, asking people for money who I know don't want to invest.
Yeah. And what you said is powerful. It really reminded me of a journey that I had to go on back in 2008. I'll tell the story really quickly. I was really struggling with what was my role. So 2008, for context, this was in the heart of Mike Brown being his life taken by the hands of a police officer. And I was really struggling with what is my role? What part should I play? And a friend, he told me, because I was really struggling, because we're both in private the same, but in public I could not be, because I have the responsibility of the platform
Mm,
that I sit on here. I have the responsibility of being a leader at my church, and so everything I say, I don't just say on behalf of talent.
yes.
So I was struggling with what can I do, and I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And my friend, we're the same. He's a pastor, a senior leader of a church, and he was headed down to uh, be a part of the marching and the protest and hands up and all that. And I was like, man, I just feel like I'm not doing enough. And he reminded me of the book of Nehemiah, how he went back to his homeland to rebuild the wall, but he didn't rebuild the wall himself. He encouraged everybody to rebuild the part of the wall that was in their backyard, for lack of a better term. And so
Hmm.
he said, what you're doing, the economic piece, is part of the overall struggle. And
Yep.
so we don't necessarily get that sometimes, that we can all play a part, even with our own income, even if we don't have a platform that has followers and whatnot. But what we do with our dollars is a part of pressing back against systemic racism and systemic oppression, and trying to play an impossible catch-up game. But we can still make strides if each one of us does the part of rebuilding the wall that's in our own backyard. And I think that that is a part of the movement that you've created with One Stock, One Future,
Yes, sir.
because we can do a part of this journey in our own households.
Mm.
We can say, hey, kids, sit down. Let's have a talk about dollars and cents and income and expenses and investing. Why did you, with all your whole journey, you talked about engineering, the music industry, private capital, why did you say, I need to do something that targets kids,
Hmm.
their ability to invest? What was in your heart at that moment?
So when I got back to Chicago in '08, Tyler, I'd always been involved in youth education and mentorship. Mentorship was important to me. The firm where I just left was founded by an African American guy who's been my mentor since I was 17 years old. I'm now 42, so I've known him well more than half my life. There's not a single important life decision that I've made, whether it's related to money or relationships or jobs or education, that he hasn't been involved with in some way, shape, or form since I was 17. So I know the importance of mentorship. I know the importance of education. And I had to go through my own trials and tribulations related to money. Working as an entrepreneur in New York, student loans, credit cards, out of this world. I mean, I had credit cards where the limit was 5,000, my balance was 7,000, and my APR was 29.99%. Those are the fun days, right? And I learned how to address that in a way that my formal fancy education had not taught. And that's the information that I want to share with others with the program I'm launching in January. But as it relates to One Stock, One Future, given my continuous focus on kids, education, and mentorship, I got to a point where I realized something, Talent. In one of your recent videos, you talk about mindset as being one of those first aspects to really starting to move on that journey towards building wealth. You can put all the techniques of investing and everything in front of someone, but if that mindset isn't there, you realize that it's probably falling on deaf ears. It's falling on fearful ears. It's falling on terrified and embarrassed ears because of where they are, and they don't want to be vulnerable as it relates to their money. So with young people, you have a chance to get in there before that fear sets in because they don't know any better at that point. So I've done a lot of I was invited with Chicago Urban League and other organizations to come talk to youth about money, what I'm doing in private equity, venture capital, Shark Tank like meetings. They found that exciting. And I realized something in one program. So I'll tell you two distinct points where it finally hit me that I needed to start One Stock, One Future. I was doing a program for the Urban League. They asked me to come in and talk to a group of students and help them build an actual stock portfolio with real capital provided by a bank. I was like, okay, cool. That sounds awesome. I showed up, there were 3 kids, 3 on the south side of Chicago. And I asked the question, I had to say, a bank is giving away money to young people to start stock portfolios. Awesome that the Urban League has put this together and has asked me to be involved with it. And I get there and there's 3 people, 3 kids, and I think 2 of them were siblings. so if
2
they could make
households
it,
represented.
that's it. So if they couldn't make it, if the parent couldn't bring them, now I'm left with 1 student. And I stuck by my commitment. I did it. I went there every once a month on a Saturday, and I met with these 3 young people to build portfolios. And I'm still in touch with a couple of them today. I used to run into them at like festivals on the South Side and go, hey, that's Mr. Solomon, help me build a stock portfolio. But I began asking questions. Why was it only 3 kids? Is it parental apathy? Is it the kids are too busy? Is it that they didn't have the right transportation? Is it the Urban League didn't market it enough? There had to be some reason why there were only 3 young people. And I developed this thesis that said for a lot of financial programs in general, for adults and young people, I believe, this is my personal belief, that often the programs go too far, too deep, too fast. That our desire to impart this knowledge and wisdom of how money works when the mindset isn't quite there, we're doing a lot of heavy rowing in the wrong direction in the river. And these folks want that knowledge. They may want to be, they want to improve their financial situation, but like you said, the mindset isn't there. And so with young people, and then you're trying to get the parents there, if these programs are in the evening or on the weekend, you're now asking a parent to take yet another day to take their kids somewhere. They may have to work on the weekend. They may not have appropriate transportation to get there. And so I looked at these extracurricular financial programs. And so that was in my head. Then I had another experience totally separate with my niece. And I talk about this at a website that I would love folks to check out, sharecropper2shareholder.com. Sharecropper to shareholder is a hashtag that I developed when I thought about my experience with my niece, who's 8 years old at the time, who's now turning 13 in February. I decided to buy her shares of Nike, Apple, and Disney. Just being the good uncle, no different than what you do for your kids, Talent, and what you've already done for your kids and building for their future. She's 8 years old. I said, Uncle Ren's going to buy her shares of Nike, Apple, and Disney. Walked her into each store to explain to her what that meant. Said, Cadence, you're now an owner now of these stores. She said, cool. Do I get free stuff now? I said, that's not exactly how it works, but we'll talk about how you benefit from this company's growth. She goes into a Starbucks. I got her some Starbucks stock after that. Grabs her mom by the hand, my sister, and says, Mommy, you know I own this place a little bit. Mindset, Talent. I've got an 8-year-old to understand what ownership means in a company. She doesn't know what an option is. She don't know what derivatives are. She doesn't know what price to earnings ratio is. She doesn't know what volatility is. She doesn't know what IRR is. She doesn't need to know those things right now.
She just knows she owns a little bit.
She knows she owns a little bit. And that is the mission of One Stock. It isn't growing a portfolio about 30%. It isn't about creating day traders in kids. It's not even about finances. It's about life. It's about ownership. It's about understanding what ownership means. And it could be ownership of your behaviors, ownership of your actions, and connecting and engaging them with the world around them in a way that's not likely to happen just going through the standard courses in school. So when I had the experience with my niece, plus this concern about these programs that only get 10 to 20 kids at a time, and then they often only get the kids that were like me, the straight A kid, whose parents were focused on education. We go to those extracurricular programs. The kids that need it, the kid who can barely read, the kid who's having trouble doing basic arithmetic, they're not in that program. But with One Stock, you don't even need to know how to do basic addition. I'm literally giving away shares and saying to a young person, you now own a piece of Jordan Brand. You now own a piece of iPhone. So that's how One Stock, One Future got developed to turn 1 million youth into public company shareholders by donating shares of stock to young people.
And now, a word from our sponsors. What do you want for your family? It's time to make a decision. Taking care of your financial well-being while building trust with your spouse doesn't have to be tough, and learning how to do it won't cost you a fortune. Tala and Ty McNeely, the creators of His and Her Money, present to you Power Couples University. Imagine if you reduce financial stress and take control of your life. Come be equipped with the tools for money management, wealth building, relationship wellness, and entrepreneurship. Get access to online courses, live Q&A sessions with Tala and Ty McNeely, a private accountability group, and expert masterclass sessions from the world's smartest money and entrepreneurship experts. Don't wait, it's time to make a decision. Power Couples University. Visit powercouplesuniversity.com for more details. And now back to the show.
Dope. That's dope. So I got a 11, 9, 7-year-old. There's people listening right now who might have kids or nieces, nephews, grandkids that age. Coach us. How do we start this conversation with them?
You got it. The first thing to do is to try to engage them in the basic household financial activities. And it could be something as simple. I'll tell the story about my first job. So I was an engineer at a company called Procter & Gamble. Most people have never heard of Procter & Gamble, even to this day, right? But I'll say this. I can almost guarantee that everybody watching right now has at least one product in their house from Procter & Gamble. And I do this in a program. I work with young people. So I'm talking to a group of, say, sixth graders. I say, have you heard of Procter & Gamble? No, never heard of it. Okay, cool. Anybody brush their teeth today? Yep. What'd you use? Eventually someone says Crest. I go, Procter & Gamble made that. I ask them, do they wash their clothes or have their clothes washed for them? Say, what detergent do your parents use? Inevitably, within the first guess or the second guess, it's Tide or Cheer or Game, which Procter & Gamble makes all of. I talk about Febreze. I asked the young people, have any of them taken a deuce lately? They started giggling, like, did he just ask us if we took a deuce? I said, yeah, did you take a deuce? Everybody's got to take a deuce. What'd you use afterwards? Toilet paper? What kind? Charmin. So that would be step one. You want to engage with young people in a conversation about money, ownership, and businesses. The first thing is understand the products that you already buy in your home. Look in the kitchen, look in the bathroom, look in your living room, from the video games that they play to the toys that they play with, to the books that they read, the movies that they watch, the food that they eat, and the consumer products that they use. That's probably one of the easiest, fastest ways to do it. The next thing to do is then encourage them on their own to go identify products around the house and to tell you what company made those products. And whether that's looking on the back of it, you can look on the back of a Crest toothpaste bottle tube right now and see manufactured by Procter & Gamble, or by looking it up on their iPhone or computer. I mean, kids are so proficient right now with technology, it's scary. From 4 years old, they're already making their way. I'm sure yours are all over technology right now. And I think that
especially
the
with
third
e-learning.
step after that, come on now, they don't have a choice right now. And, and again, unfortunately, too many young people who don't have access to that technology, just to go on a bit of a tangent, are going to be sort of left even further behind. So we have to work even harder to just catch up and keep them at a base level so that we can move this conversation forward. The last step then is opening accounts for them, where they can see the money in an account in their name that's growing based on their ownership in these companies. You start doing those three things, you'd be amazed at the conversations you can then start having. The site that I use is stockpile.com. But with any of what's called a brokerage firm, which is where you hold your money for investment accounts, companies like Fidelity and Charles Schwab, which are a little more old school, even they're now embracing this idea of being able to invest smaller amounts of money, even when the price of a company is higher than you have. So 15 years ago, if you wanted to buy a share of Amazon, you had to buy a share of Amazon. And that's a hefty price tag to pay for companies like Amazon. Whereas now you can say, I only have $200 to invest. I only have $50 to invest. I have $10 to invest. You can still buy a piece of that company. It might not be a full slice of the pie, but you can buy a sliver of it even for smaller amounts. And I think if you do that with young people, it opens up the door to more conversation.
That's called fractional shares. That's I guess the official terminology of it, the way that Rendell is breaking it down. Whereas you back in the day, if he said, like he said, if you wanted a stock in a certain company, you had to buy one whole stock. Well, now a lot of companies stockpile leading the way amongst others that you can buy a piece based on the dollars that you have. So it won't be a full share, but it'll be, you can stack them on top of each other to eventually get to that full share. So depending on your situation, you might want to look at apps like Stockpile or go the traditional route, like he said, with some of the traditional brokerage companies, the Fidelities of the world, the Vanguards of the world, so on and so forth. So if I want to open an account for my kids, there's several options out there. I'm curious as to what you advise. There's just getting a regular brokerage account. There's UGMAs and UTMAs. What is your advice when it comes to these different options? Pros and cons, I guess.
I don't have Absolutely. I don't have specific advice on those. I mean, those questions are probably more suitable for a tax advisor, which often makes this conversation a little more challenging because now you've just inserted one more player on the team to get involved. But yes, some type of custodial account. And as you mentioned, the UTMA's, the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. Unfortunately, I know that there are various rules and restrictions on how those assets get passed down to the young people. There is information online. Any brokerage firm that you call, the question you just asked, Talit, I encourage viewers, write that question down. So whether you call Stockpile customer service or call Fidelity, ask them about those types of custodial accounts and the options that you have to create an account with the young person in your life.
And how do you continue on the conversation? Like you said, at first you started with your niece with Nike, Disney, and Apple, and then you added Starbucks. And so how do you keep, because, kids, their mind could be scattered, shiny object, chasing squirrels. So how do we have that initial conversation? Like you said, we look around the house or companies that, like my son he's watching YouTube videos on Nintendo. So I told him to look up Nintendo and their stock price and all that type stuff. How do we keep the conversation going and keep this as a part? Because we're trying to build a legacy. We're trying to establish habits. Like you said, your niece looked at her mom and said, hey, I own a little bit of this. So how do we keep the conversation going once we initially started?
So Cadence's portfolio, which started with the three companies you mentioned, and it's not an endorsement of those companies or their stocks. I am not, unfortunately, I can't give broker dealer advice. I just bought companies because she would know the brand. After that, the way you get them engaged, Tyler, one, do what you did. You keep them involved in the conversation about finances in the household, and you ask them if they like something, ask them to look up stock prices for that company. Two real quick ways that you can keep the conversation going. One is as you seek to grow and build their portfolio, because the three, in my opinion, most important aspects to your investment and financial future are time, consistency, and diversification. Time, consistency, and diversification. The earlier you start, the more time you give your money to grow, the better off you're going to be. If you're 20 years old watching this right now, you are in a much better position to create wealth than Talit and I are. Thankfully, hopefully we have a few more years in front of us to build our money, but you're at a different stage of life. You're going to have more time for that money to grow, which is powerful. Consistency, putting money in regularly, as opposed to saying, I'm going to put 200 in today and I'm done for the next 4 years. I don't know if I'm going to have any more money. Find an amount that you can do on a biweekly or monthly basis and seek to stick to that number and invest it no matter what. And not to get so hung up on, should I buy this or should I buy that? Should I buy this? Should I buy that? If you're not investing in anything, then you're not benefiting from what typically has been general growth in stocks over long periods of time. And then diversification, having not putting all your eggs in one basket. But on that question around continuing the conversation with young people, ask them what stock do they want next when they get good grades or they do something you like, or maybe it's just every month or every 2 months, maybe it's allowance. What company do you want to own next and why? And don't try to guide them. Like you just said, their minds like to explore. So let them tell you. When I do classes with young people, I challenge them in my workshop. The same thing. Why do you want to own this stock? There's no wrong answer. Remember, Cadence wanted Starbucks. Actually, I didn't say that here. I do say it in my TED Talk. Cadence wanted Starbucks for two reasons. One, she saw that their stock was up that day, and her mommy buys coffee from there all the time. And I said, that is more than enough of a reason for you to get shares in Starbucks. Now, another story about Cadence buying, wanting stock. She wanted Microsoft one day. And I said, that's not bad at all. Microsoft dominates, the computer industry. I'm saying that in my head because I don't want to guide her. So I'm thinking, sure, I'll get her some Microsoft stock. But I asked her why. And she said, well, I know that there's this company called Mojang that makes Minecraft, and I know Microsoft has something to do with them. I had no idea what my 9-year-old niece was talking about at the time. I go Google to see that Microsoft had purchased the software developer Mojang for like $2 billion, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little less. She knew that Mojang made Minecraft, which she plays all the time. So she on her own made the connection. Well, if Microsoft bought Mojang and Mojang makes Minecraft, if I own Microsoft, that means I now own Minecraft. That is the conversation you want to be able to have with young people to keep the conversation going. The other one is we watch news all the time, whether it's on social media or still on television, and we see things happening all the time. Ask young people on a weekly basis to bring you a few news articles about the companies that are now in their portfolio. So if she now owns Nike, Apple, Disney, I say, Cadence, bring me 3 news articles about the stuff in your portfolio. Maybe it's something the CEO said or did. Maybe it's they decided to come out with a new product. Maybe it's a press release. Maybe there was a airline lowered its prices. Whatever it is, and that helps you engage in conversation as well. So continue to build their portfolio and then have dialogue with them about the companies in their portfolio, and not just financial items. You can start to do social commentary as well. Recall the incident in Philadelphia where the 2 brothers were arrested in Starbucks. I can now say to Cadence, these 2 Black men were arrested seemingly for no reason in a restaurant that you own. People are now don't want to come in your store. If they don't come in your store, how do you feel about that? How do you feel? What do you do? What do you tell the president and CEO of the company that you are a part owner of about the way these 2 men were treated? That's a powerful dialogue you can have with a young person about social justice.
Very much so. I was laughing earlier because my son wants to own Sony for one very distinct reason. They are the creators of PlayStation, Dad. That's why.
Yes.
So tell people how they can engage with One Stock, One Future, sharecropper to shareholder, and how they can stay in touch with you.
Thank you so much for this time, Tyler. It's such a phenomenal topic. I love following you guys. We'll continue to do so and share everything that you're talking about. I encourage folks, follow me on Instagram at Rendel_Solomon is the easiest way to get in touch with me. And please do check out sharecropper2shareholder.com. And if you can't remember that long title, if you just Google my name, Rendel Solomon, and TED Talk or TEDx, it'll come right up. I'd love to get your thoughts on that speech I give in TEDx Chicago, where I'm talking about how even just within my family, in 68 years, just 3 generations, we go from my grandmother picking cotton in Mississippi in the 1950s to my mother being high school educated, to me and my sisters being college and grad school educated, to now my niece, who's my granny's great-granddaughter, her second great-grandchild, is now picking stocks. Her portfolio now consists of Nike, Apple, Disney, Starbucks, Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, Tesla, McDonald's, Uber, Dunkin' Donuts, and there's something else in there I think I'm forgetting. It's grown to now 12 different companies. And I looked over one day and I said, this lovely 80-year-old woman was picking cotton in 100-degree weather in the South for pennies under harsh Jim Crow conditions. Her great-grandchild is picking stocks. And I said, how can I bring that knowledge and that information to 1 million other young people and families? And what could that do to push us along this spectrum of what we've been denied and what's been extracted from us for so long due to systemic racism? So that is just one part of how I'm seeking to address these issues.
Amazing. As we close, let's make it personal. Why should everybody listening at the conclusion of this episode start the conversation with their kids, nieces, nephews, grandkids, what have you, today? not tomorrow.
Our life depends on it, Talent. I think it's the first time I've actually said that in a video. I fundamentally believe our lives, our existence depends on these conversations, the sacrifices that have been made for you, for me, the sacrifices you're making for your kids. Like, that is what's needed as we move from generation to generation, even given everything else going on around us. And I wish I could sit here and say that if we only did that, everything would be okay. I would be lying to you if I said that. And I'm not going to do that here on the show. And I'm sure Talent wouldn't want me doing that on his show. It is necessary to do those things, but it is not sufficient. We have to continue to push financially, educationally, as hard as we can. And what I've decided to do now that I have more resources, I've amassed more resources than my parents were able to attain in their life, than my grandmother was able to attain. It would be a gross misuse of the sacrifices that they've made for me if all I did was accumulate wealth for myself. Yes, I want money. I like nice things. I don't get to wear my nice suits anywhere anymore, but it's incumbent upon me as someone where those sacrifices have been made, that I seek to do even more for the next generation. And the way that I want to do that, not only by passing along this knowledge, like you talked about at the top of the show, but also directly talking to and addressing a system that does not want to see Black people succeed.
Can't say it no better than that. So we really appreciate you, Rendel, for taking some time out of your schedule to come and share all this great knowledge with us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you, viewers. Please DM me, ping me. I'd love to get your thoughts and hear more about your own financial journey with the young people in your life.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic load of information for you to digest. Now, you know, when it comes to the His and Her Money Show, the goal is not just to give you some ear candy, just for you to hear some motivational stuff and take no action. If you do that, then this was a waste of time. We bring special guests like this on to tackle topics such as these that you don't hear on a lot of shows, because we want you to take action. We want you to take the information and put feet to it. So that is our hope, that you will engage this conversation with the young people in your life and follow up that conversation with the action. Get these accounts open, get these stocks purchased, even if you need to go the fractional share route where you can come into the game with whatever you have available. You don't have to have $1,000. You don't have to have $100. Come in with what you have. You can go to apps like Rendel mentioned, like Stockpile, get fractional shares, $25. Come on, let's do that. He even talked about attaching it to good grades. I mean, let's do the work. All right, guys, that's all we got for this time. Remember, we got great information and education and inspiration just like this at our website, hisandhermoney.com. Until next time, guys. Peace.